Here, if we're talking about Muslims in the West, do you have any statistics about, at least in the U.S., how many Muslims you have?
There is a great deal of controversy about that. The Islamic advocacy groups in the United States, which are linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, they tend to exaggerate the numbers to a tremendous degree.
Okay.
And so they try to exaggerate the political power of Islam in the United States by saying there's 7 million Muslims in the United States, 9 million Muslims, and so on. The reality is much different. The Pew Research Center, which is a survey, a group that has conducted a number of very illuminating and important surveys among Muslims in the United States and around the world, they estimate 2.3 million Muslims in the United States.
Okay.
But it's very interesting to note that nobody ever asks or cares how many Buddhists there are in the United States. It's only a function of the political aspects and supremacist aspects and violent aspects of Islam that make this a question that's of any note.
Right. And do we have any statistics about converts every year, like people who convert to Islam from Americans?
No, that's also unclear because here again it's wildly exaggerated.
Okay.
There are stories of converts to Islam. It's something that is very much trumpeted in the press in the Islamic world. Generally, a convert to Islam of reasonable prominence will get a big write-up in Al Jazeera in English. Right. And a great deal of publicity.
Right.
And so actually, if you track those stories, which I do, there aren't very many of them. So I'm not sure that there are...
I heard 20,000 a year. Some
well, that's an impressive number. But a lot of those are people who have know nothing about Islam and are not becoming Muslim because they are convinced in conscience that it's true, but because they're getting married.
Okay.
Or something like that, and they are told by their by the spouse. I mean, generally, it's a woman because it's
why women?
Because Islam forbids a non-Muslim man to marry a Muslim woman.
Right.
The idea is that Islam is always increasing and the non-Muslims are always decreasing. And so a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim woman, but a Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim man. And so the man has to convert to Islam if in that event. And I know many men who have done so, and then they have told me later they had no idea what they were getting into and are very sorry. Some of them have. I actually know some of them who it's a sad thing to say, but American-born, American people who have lived all their lives in the United States, but they met here a Malaysian or an Indonesian or a Pakistani woman, and they convert to Islam and get married.
Right.
And then they find out about Islam and become disenchanted, but they also find out they can't leave. And so I know several men who are outwardly Muslim. They don't feel free enough or safe enough to declare that they're no longer Muslim, because they're in touch with even the immigrant communities in the United States would threaten their lives.
Do you think money is used in spreading Islam in the United States, especially from countries like Saudi Arabia and others?
Yes, very much so. Absolutely. In many ways. The Saudis, in the first place, are spending millions of dollars to spread Islam. And so they have been underwriting proselytizing efforts, building mosques, underwriting efforts to convert people to Islam in prisons.
Right.
And that's one way they're spending money. But also when you convert to Islam in that kind of context, it may be that you will find a very willing support network that will suddenly be taking care of maybe some financial difficulties that you have and some other kinds of difficulties. Right. And these things are great incentives, of course, for people.
You mentioned prisons, and I read statistics about American inmates in American prisons. They say 20% of them are Muslims. And so why prisons?
I think that one of the main reasons why there's so much targeting of American prisoners and attempts to convert them to Islam is because there you have a base of people that is already alienated from the society, and that is already, in many cases, violent.
Right.
And you can come to them and channel their alienation and violence and say this is something that God blesses, that God wants.
Right.
God wants you to hate these people, and they are hateful. And God wants you to make war against them.
So they give them a legitimate excuse.
It legitimizes the things that landed them into prison in the first place.
Right. There are some...